Hi there, it's Kristen from k.becca, and in this video I'll show you how to combine digital die cutting with hot foiling to make custom embellishments that you can use in all sorts of card making, scrapbooking, and paper crafts projects. Before I started filming, I set up a print and cut document in Silhouette Studio using the Love Always SVG digital stamps plus border cut files that you can find in my shop. I'll include a link to those in the description area below. After I set up the document, I printed it onto acetate, or as it's sometimes called, transparency film. Acetate is ideal for DIY hot foiling because it's a very smooth, non-porous surface. When you foil using a laminator or a Minc or some other heat-activated method, you have to print whatever you'll be foiling using a laser printer. Laser printers use toner, which is a powdery substance that is basically melted onto paper or whatever surface you're printing onto as it runs through the printer. And when the printed piece is then run through a Minc or other hot foiling machine, the toner remelts and fuses with the foil in all of the areas where there's toner coverage. So when you're hot foiling, you want to print onto surfaces where the toner sits on top of the surface and more readily fuses with the foil. This is why it can be very difficult to get great hot foil results with papers that aren't smooth or coated. With those types of paper and cardstock, the toner absorbs and isn't sitting on the surface as nicely as it does with smoother coated papers and surfaces like acetate, which prevent the toner from absorbing. When printing onto acetate for hot foiling, you need to be sure to use laser printer friendly acetate. I really like this transparency film by C-Line, which comes in a package of 50 8.5 by 11 sheets for about $20. I originally bought it for making windows for shaker cards, and it works really well for those too. Before I get to the hot foiling, I want to talk about heat-resistant acetate from Hot Off the Press, which is a product that some of you might have in your craft supply stash. I thought that it might work well with a laser printer since it's heat-resistant, so I tried it out. Unfortunately, my results weren't great. As you can see, there are areas where lines of toner came off while printing and remelted around the original print area. I thought the problem might be with my printer, so I printed another sheet and had the exact same issues. So while this acetate is great for shaker cards and die cutting and heat embossing, it just doesn't seem to be manufactured to work with laser printers. Alright, back to the C-Line acetate and onto the foiling. The next thing that I'm going to do is cut a piece of the Minc reactive foil, and I'm using the light pink foil here, to slightly larger than my sheet of acetate. After that, I'll place the sheet of acetate with the foil over it into a transfer folder. And I want to make sure that I don't foil any of the registration marks, so I'll cover those with strips of plain printer paper before I run everything through the Minc. I forgot to do this recently with a print and cut hot foil project that I was making, and it really threw the registration off when I went to die cut it on my Silhouette Cameo. So definitely make sure to cover those registration marks up before running them through a foiling machine. After both the top and bottom registration marks are covered with the printer paper, I'll close the cover on my transfer folder and run it through the Minc on heat setting 4, which is the setting that I use almost exclusively because it gives me great results on most things that I foil. And you can see what awesome results I got on the acetate after I peel the foil sheet off. Results like this are why I don't seem to ever get tired of foiling things. So next we'll need to die cut our foiled pieces, and this is where I ran into some challenges during the testing process. The first time I tried it, the Silhouette Cameo was able to successfully register the page, but the registration was way off. At first I thought that the transparency of the acetate was the problem, so I cut a sticker label and stuck the pieces on the underside of the acetate beneath each of the registration marks to make the surface more opaque. But when I tried registering the page on the Cameo, it wouldn't register at all. I restarted Silhouette Studio, restarted the Cameo, made sure the cover on the machine was closed, but it still wouldn't register. After about half a dozen tries, I gave up on this method. Then I realized that, hey, the reflectivity of the surface is the real issue here, and putting those sticker labels underneath the registration marks just made the acetate even more reflective. So here's what I did next. First, I opened a blank document in Silhouette Studio and turned the registration marks on like you typically do for print and cut projects. Then I printed the page with just the registration marks onto regular printer paper. After that, I cut out each of the registration marks from the printer paper. You may need to recut some areas like I did to make sure that the printer paper isn't covering any of the areas on the acetate that will be die cut. The only thing that you need to make sure of is that you're not cutting off any part of the registration marks. Next, I grabbed some double-sided tape and placed small pieces on the back side of the pieces with the registration marks. Then I'll line up each of the registration marks over the corresponding marks on the acetate and adhere them in place. I just hold the piece of acetate and registration mark up to a light, and this makes it really easy to line things up, which I'm not able to show you here, but that's what I'm doing right now. If you have a light box, you can also use that, or if it's daylight, you can hold the acetate and registration mark up to a window and do this too. Oh, and I wanted to mention that both of the corner bracket registration marks are exactly the same, so you don't have to worry about accidentally mixing them up because they're interchangeable. After I've attached all of the printer paper registration marks, I'm ready to head to the die cutting machine. The cut settings that I use for the Silhouette Cameo are a blade depth of 8, a speed of 4, and double cut. You may need to adjust those settings depending on how new your blade is and how thick your acetate is. Alright, the die cutting has just finished, and as you can see, I have a bunch of perfectly cut and hot foiled acetate embellishments. As of now, I've used this technique about half a dozen times and have not had any problems at all. And you can also reuse those printer paper registration marks. Just peel them off of the acetate and adhere them to another piece. As long as you don't wrinkle or rip the paper, you should be able to reuse them as many times as you want. I'm so excited about how these turned out, and now I have lots of ideas for adding hot foil acetate elements to projects, so I think that you'll see them appearing again in future videos. If you don't have acetate, you can always make them using white cardstock too. They won't be transparent, but they'll still be really cool. In case you're wondering how you might attach these elements to projects without glue or tape or foam showing through from the back, I have a couple of options that I really like. First are these clear foam squares from Cool Tack. You can easily cut them with scissors if you need smaller pieces and adhere them onto the back of the acetate. If you don't need dimension, you can also use a clear glue. I don't have it here to show you right now, but I really like the Tombow Mono Aqua Liquid Glue, which goes on clear and dries clear. I hope that this video has given you some ideas about how you can use your digital die cutting machine in combination with the Minc to create custom hot foil elements for all sorts of projects. You can find a full list of supplies used in this project in the description area below or in the area below the video if you're watching on k.becca.com. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more hot foiling projects with the Minc, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll tune in again soon.